Hey everybody, Matt Brady here, your Carolina mortgage coach, and on this episode of Behind the Closing Table, I'm with Rick Trexel, and he is with Coldwell Banker down in Charleston, South Carolina. So, Rick, thanks for being on,
Thanks
and
for having me, brother.
yeah, I've known Rick for a while, back from our Beef O'Brady's restaurant days. So I knew Rick before he got into the real estate game, where he was doing both at the same time. I think when he was at
Yeah,
Beef
yeah, man.
O'Brady's.
Doubling it up, man. I was doing the restaurant thing during the day or during the night and real estate during the day. It was a time.
Yeah. So I think what was not only did you have to get real estate started in the South Carolina area, in the Fort Mill area, you moved to Charleston and had to redo it. So, what steps did you do different things when you had to restart your career a second time? Did you follow the same path? What was the difference?
Yeah, man. So it was similar. So it was the same license, South Carolina. I was licensed in North and South Carolina at the time, being so close to the Charlotte border. But yeah, so when I moved, I mean, the licensing the same. It was learning the market. That was everything. I mean, the market's night and days different compared to the Charlotte market and the Rock Hill and Fort Mill. Charleston's got its own thing going on. So it was just learning that.
Okay. Nice. So, I'm sure you've seen real estate agents. Everyone thinks this industry is easy to get into from social media and all the TV shows about it. Where do you think what skill set do you need to have to be successful in this industry? And where do you think you see people fizzle out the first few years in this industry?
Yeah, man, that's exactly right. So that's why I got into real estate, man. I was watching too much HGTV and the DIY network, the Property Brothers, man. I wanted to be like them and be rich and not work. And so I
Hmm.
think that is the persona. Real estate agents make a ton of money and don't have a whole lot of work to do. And so getting into it with that mindset, um, I think is the biggest mistake for most agents because that's what they do. They look at their calendar for the day and there's nothing on it. Oh, day off.
Yeah.
And so it's not a day off. You're unemployed. So
Yeah.
you got to put something on that calendar. And so your job now isn't actually real estate is to figure out how to fill your calendar. And so that's how you got to treat it. I think that's where most agents fizzle out. They get into it thinking it's easy, and this market is anything but easy. It's the wilds. I've been doing it for 13 years now, and so this is the wildest market I've seen. You've been doing, mortgages
Yeah.
for a long time too, and you probably
Yeah.
agree. And we're in a different space than we've ever seen. So, if you don't stay focused, you don't try to fill your calendar every day, you treat it like a business. That's where the agents fizzle out.
And I think where people underestimate is the work you do today is your paycheck 2 or 3 months from now. It's not
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
a direct cause of that work and effort you put in today, you get paid Friday on it, you
100%.
know?
Yeah, 90 days in real estate is what they say. So, the work you do today, maybe you'll get a paycheck by Christmas if you're lucky, or maybe you'll
Yeah.
be working with that same person next July. You just don't
Mhm.
you just don't ever know. But yeah,
See,
that's true, man. You gotta grind. It's a daily thing.
definitely. What are you seeing down in the Charleston market right now? Is it buyer's market, seller's market, balanced market? Have you seen more people enter the market? What are you guys seeing down there?
Yeah, so I feel like, the beginning of this year, things started picking up. Rates have been pretty high the last couple of years, and we got into the beginning of this year, and you could feel spring was coming. And then we did this, we jumped into this oil war thing, and then
Mhm.
things just not necessarily halted, but slowed down considerably. And so we didn't really have a proper spring market, but I do feel like now people are kind of enough is enough.
Yeah.
The ones that need to make the moves are making moves. You don't have like 2020 where people are moving just because, we call them lunchtime buyers. They take a lunch break and just go look at a house and buy it just because rates
Yeah.
were 3%. So, you don't get any of that, but you still have some people coming to Charleston, about 33 people a day still moving to Charleston. So you still get some activity. It's super hyper local though. So like you got to take different parts of Charleston. So you have Mount Pleasant area, Charleston downtown, the islands. It's still super popular there. I'd say it's a pretty even market there. But as you kind of get out towards to like Somerville holds almost like a third of all of our inventory in our entire MLS. There's so much going on in Somerville, new construction, resale. So that's really where I would say it's kind of grown to a buyer's market. There's so much inventory. Rates really haven't come down from the mid sixes into almost seven, and so people are kind of sitting. It's not as desirable being in the, proximity to the beaches and downtown. So, it's more of a buyer's market in that area. But if you price your home right, you're still moving.
Mhm. Is it as much of a investment market too as you see in Myrtle Beach, or is it not as bad in the Charleston area?
I mean, there's opportunities, but I've heard that Myrtle gets a lot more opportunity right now. I mean, the price points are better. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not cheap to move to Charleston. I've heard that I'm not. While I'm licensed in South Carolina, I'm not part of the Myrtle Beach MLS, so I couldn't tell you. But just talking to other agents and networking, I think there's a lot more investment opportunity in Myrtle than there is in Charleston.
And I think there's more restrictions in Charleston in terms of Airbnbs and stuff, right?
Yeah, short-term rentals, man, they hate them.
Okay.
There was a time where, the short-term rentals were everywhere downtown, and you could feel that,
Yeah.
going down there, and so they ultimately made, like, a little sliver of downtown was the area for short-term rentals was still eligible. I mean, they have a
Mhm.
whole department of people, like, knocking on doors and making sure people aren't trying to, like, get around on the short-term rental thing. So it's very strict, there's caps, there's certain areas that do qualify, certain areas that don't. It's a sliding scale, it's changing every day almost, and so they're tightening the noose for sure.
Even more important of who you work with, because you
Yeah,
the
yeah, man,
worst
that's
thing to
crazy.
do is buy a property and then not realize that you can do your
Oh, that's the
short-term
biggest
rentals in it.
conversation I have. Excuse me. So, if somebody's gonna be looking for that, I always tell them, "Make sure that your numbers make sense for the long term, because they can always change the rules on you."
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
So, a growing population, I would say, in the housing market right now are first-time sellers, and they're selling at probably a completely different market than what they bought in.
Yeah.
Most of your home buyers or your first-time sellers were first-time home buyers at lower interest rates, lower inventory, having to go over ask,
Yeah,
multiple
man.
offers. You just had to put a for sale sign on your house and, it would move on. It didn't really take much of the marketing from your real estate agent to get that property out there. So,
Right.
how are you having these conversations now that it's a completely different market? They might not realize it, or how much more their house, just the monthly payment would be for someone buying their house now. How are you going into these conversations? How are you educating these first time sellers in this new market that we're in?
Yeah, listing appointments, man, that's almost the number one conversation we're having because you're having these people like exactly like what you said, where they're sitting on a 2.75 or a 3%, mortgage, and they paid over asking. They got rid of all of their rights. They didn't do inspections. They waived their appraisal, and it was the nuts market. And so we're completely upside down from that now. And so, the conversation really is, what motivates you to move? What is the purpose of your move? Why are you moving? And sometimes, people are willing to overlook that they're going to go from a 3% to a 6% because of that why. And so I try to really get into that. There has been conversations in listing appointments where by the end of it, it doesn't make sense for them to move. And I'm the first one to tell them, like, listen, you just stay for a minute. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So, um, I do think that every situation is unique, but most of the time it's really just kind of diving into what's prompting this move, family change, life change, relocation. You got no choice. And so that plays a pretty big role in the conversation.
Okay. How do you handle this is for your newer real estate agents? How do you handle the conversation of we think our home is worth this, but you did your work and the comparables are here. How do you bridge that conversation? What's the game plan you set up when
I mean, it's black
when
and
you
white.
have
You
it?
jump on MLS and pull comps, I think, but you have to be also know what the market's doing. It's trending up or trending down, and or just kind of staying stagnant. And so there is a huge education there. I mean, there's so many agents in and out of the market, and so you deal with a lot of that newer agents that are just like, "This is what it is." It's like, "No, no, I'm very knowledgeable in the market. This is all I do every day. I wake up and that's the first thing I do is see what the market's doing today." And so I think the conversation just comes with educating them, pulling the numbers, pulling comps, stays on market. And some of them, like maybe it's the one home they're going to sell for the entire year, so they don't really know, but they're just pulling the comps. But it's a very different market than what we've seen before. You can't just Yeah, I was selling houses with holes in the walls, you know? And like you said, you coulda gave a I mean, it's funny, some people say it, but you coulda given a monkey a real estate license back then, and they coulda probably been successful. So, it's a very different world, you know? You really gotta price the home correctly in this market. You also gotta prep sellers that you gotta do a little more. You can't have that hole in the wall anymore, you know? You might need to paint it. Excuse me. You might have to stage it. You know, there's a bunch of different things you might have to do to set yourself up to, you know, a little bit different than the other right now, over 6,000 homes on the market in our area.
I was talking with someone and they made up a good point. They're like, you just can't look at what's recently sold. You also have to look at your competition and price according to your competition now too. Where, that's also a game to be played now is where you position, especially if there's multiple houses in one neighborhood, how you price your house compared to the others in the neighborhood to get more
Yep.
traction to you.
Yeah, it used to be pull the comps and what sold in the last 6 to 12 months, and now it's the exact opposite. I do that. I've always kinda done that. You don't only just kinda market it to what the comps tell you, you market to what do you look like on the market now, and, you know, I have a listing, we just went under contract the other day, but it sat for a couple months, and we were priced well, but there was so much inventory in that market, it's Somerville,
Yeah.
and so you know, it eventually went under contract, the market does what the market's gonna do, and the marketing was great on the home, but it's definitely a thing, you know, you gotta if there's 19 other homes in the neighborhood, where do you sit in comparison to those homes? I mean, buyers are looking at that. They got Zillow and Realtor and all these other tools at
Hmm.
their disposal. Some of them know more than you do, probably because they're
Yeah.
so hyper located on a specific neighborhood. You know, so you know, really knowing the market at a high level is everything, honestly.
Okay. Awesome. So, what would be, you have two young daughters, or not young anymore. They're high
No,
schoolers or
no,
graduate,
I
or they?
blinked and now I got teenagers.
Yeah, okay. So, say in the next few years they're looking to get, buy their first property. What are your tips to first time home buyers right now?
Oh man, I mean, the biggest one that comes to mind is I think the biggest mistake that they're making is not picking the right agent to help them. I mean, there's so many people that know so many people. You know, you got a family
Hmm.
friend, you got might be a close friend that just got their license. I mean, this is not the market to just you know someone, so they're going to help you out. You really want to align yourself with somebody who is hyper local, hyper fixated on the data. You know, someone that's in the network knows what's going on every day because that's everything right now. Like I said, in a 30-minute drive, you almost need two different agents here because there's so different of a market. So it's so important, you know, I think to align yourself with somebody who knows where you want to buy, you know, and then the market in that area. That's definitely going to be step one for sure.
Now, you mentioned this earlier. You said there's so many different areas, I'm sure depending on your vibe and what you're looking for in the
Yeah.
Charleston metro area, I guess we would call it.
Yeah.
Where
We
are
call it
some
the Tri
hidden
County.
there you go, the
Yeah.
Tri-County. What would you say are some hidden gems that, should be getting more attention, or that, people should open their horizons up that maybe not be on their radar, where if you're moving to that area, could be a hidden gem for you to find?
Hidden gem in our area, I would have to say, is Hanahan area. So it's kind of near North Charleston. I wouldn't call it a hidden gem, but people don't think Hanahan when they think Charleston. But Hanahan is about as close as you can get to Charleston without being into Charleston. And so you still have decent price points. You know, threes and fours could get you into Hanahan for a decent house, for a decent property, decent location. You know, it's probably 30 minutes to the beaches and less than 20 minutes to downtown. And so people don't think of just Hanahan, I would definitely say is the hidden gem. Outside of that, it's not really a hidden gem because that's where all our inventory is. You can still Somerville is where a lot of people are flocking to because you can get your closing costs covered most of the time. You can get the seller down. You know, these homes have been sitting on the market in some situations over a year. And so and these are great homes. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just there's so much inventory, so much new construction. Um, you know, I do a lot of business in Somerville right now.
Hmm. Now, if someone was, there's a lot of competing information out there. What do you think are some of the mistakes that you think sellers make before they list their property?
Having that old school mindset, man, you know, the mindset of I can just be a for sale by owner. It doesn't matter who I hire, and that's the biggest mistake right now because it's the most absolute utmost important to find the agent that knows the market, knows what's going on, someone that can educate a seller without offending them because sellers do get offended right now when you go in there and tell them that their golden property that is the best one in the world is just like the one down the street. And so you gotta have to have that conversation lightly. But the biggest mistake I think sellers are making is still having that mindset. You got to be able to be educated and let them know, what the market's doing. We're not in the seller's market anymore. You can't just slap that home with the hole in the wall on the market and expect it to sell in a weekend.
Mhm.
That's an old way of thinking. And so that change, that's mostly what I do in listing appointments now is let people know what the market is doing, again, specific to the location. But yeah, definitely that's
Okay. Now, what would you say are the top 3 renovations, and maybe not full renovations, not talking dropping thousands and thousands of
right.
dollars on a new kitchen or a new bathroom. But if someone was looking to list, what would you say are like 3 relatively budget friendly things you can do to your home to make it more appealing in this market right now?
Yeah, first thing's gonna be curb appeal. When a buyer pulls up to the property, that's where they form their first opinion on the home. And I've always been a firm believer, no matter what market we're in, you want that to be amazing. It really sets the trend on how they're going to walk through the property. Great curb appeal, outside's amazing. You have that, warm and fuzzy feeling pulling up. You're going to walk through the house a lot more optimistically than you would if you didn't have that curb appeal. You might miss some things because you're just in shock how excited you are about the home. And then the opposite, if it's awful curb appeal, you're going to go through with a negative mindset and just going to hate the home. You're going to see, cracks in the walls and stuff that's typically not a big deal. And kind of make more of an issue about them than it would be. So I'd say spruce up your outside for sure, make it nice. Coats of paint everywhere really could help neutral things out. Used to be beiges back in the early teens, and now you can see those are outdated. And so it was only 10 or 15 years ago, but the beiges are super outdated looking. So get a fresh coat of neutral paint on the wall that's, more in palette with what we got going on now. Grays in the Charleston market, you're seeing, some blues, kind of some beachy themes going on. Something like that will be a lot more, will be a lot better than the beiges. Well, without going through full renovations, I would say just make the house feel as big as possible. Get rid of clutter. And that's something that's free, hide it, put it in closets. I mean, in
Be
the
your chance to
garage.
purge what you
Everybody
haven't
knows
been
what a
able to get
garage
rid
looks
of
like.
yet.
Yeah.
Purge what you haven't been able to get rid
Rent a
of yet.
storage unit, get rid of the clutter, make it feel as big as possible. So they can really picture them, so the buyers can really picture themselves in there.
Okay, awesome. And then what would you say is a mistake you see buyers make over and over? Or I think another thing is, what they tend to overvalue, which doesn't turn out to be at the end of the day that big of a deal.
That's a good question. So I would say, I mean, 2 parts to that question. I'd say the biggest mistake I see is people still having that mindset of going in and not doing their due diligence. I mean, in 2020, 2021, you really had to get a house. You had to waive all of your rights, and now I really say, dig into that due diligence. I've just saw for the second time in 13 years someone do a sewer scope. And so, you give them a whole list of things that they should do and what's ever important to them, they do. And so that was a little too thorough in that specific situation, but do your due diligence. Make sure that after closing, you're not going to hate what you just got into. The repair bills don't just start stacking up. So, biggest mistake is lack of due diligence. We're in a market now where you have all the time in the world as a buyer. So, maybe even get the seller to even pay for some of your due diligence. It's just the market we're in. So, I'd say that's one of the biggest mistakes right now is not digging in enough onto the quality of the home.
One thing I started doing too is I give like a week of closing checklist for people when they get under or when they get close to the closing table of things they should do after closing, like set up an email, your street address at gmail.com, and drop everything in there, your repairs, your warranties. So you have like a run in Carfax for your home is one of the things. I think what people
That's smart.
underestimate is this is their biggest asset, and people don't have routine maintenance They don't get their HVAC checked in the fall and in the winter. They don't like basic stuff. They're not maintaining the property. Yeah, that's added cost of being a homeowner, but you want to maintain the value of your home and increase the value of your home.
Right.
So
Yeah, and you
keep
don't want a
track of
ten
that stuff.
thousand dollar HVAC repair.
Yeah. It's
That's
just
smart.
simple.
So you sent a checklist that has all that on it?
Yeah. To clients the
Cool.
week of closing for them to do. Like walk through your house once everything's all set up for your insurance. We don't want to think worst case, but the worst time of your life, if your house burns, if there's something like that, you don't want to have to be thinking of everything. You're probably going to forget about stuff that you've owned. So
Yeah,
if you walk through your whole house, you have a video recording of everything you've had in the house. That's like another thing I tell people to do once
that's
they get
smart.
settled.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna do that after we get off this.
Yeah. So, it's just little things like that. I feel our industry can also do a better job at is really, setting people up for successful home ownership after they get into the home. And that's what I really try to do on my side is really, build that relationship because they're like, oh, it helps because they get stuff in the mail all the time when rates go down. And I want them to call me as a reference point to it and everything like that. And I'm sure it's the same to you. You want to be that reference that when a neighbor, a coworker, anyone talks about real estate, they want to drop Rick's name. And when before we got started, I told Rick I had to step off for a second because I had to rock. This is still what I wear to the at the gym all the time. My Rick
That's
Trexel.
good.
They're like, oh, your name's Rick. I'm like, no, that's the best That's the best real estate agent in Charleston right there.
I appreciate it, bro. I still got yours. I
Yeah,
still got yours.
there you
I
go.
have hats galore.
Yeah, awesome.
That's funny.
So, um, kind of going off the name of this show, behind the closing table. When people walk away from the closing table, what do you want their experience to be? What do you want them to remember working with you as a real estate agent?
Yeah, and so that's a big one. What sets you apart from what everybody else is 7,000 plus agents here. Last what is it, Charlotte was 18, I
Oh,
think 18,000.
yeah.
That's crazy. And so what I don't pay for leads. I'm not on a team. I mean, I get all repeat business or referral business because I do set myself apart. And the biggest thing I think that people remember from me is I go above and beyond, man. You know, I can't think of the last time I had a transaction where I didn't do something that a different agent would have told them, "Hey, here's a number of somebody you should call and hire to do that." I mean, down to plumbing in a house or helping them move or just some wild stuff that people just don't believe, and they're like, "You're not gonna do that." And then sure as I do that. So, show up with a truck and a trailer, and we're doing it. So, and that happens almost on every deal. There's always something I try to do in every deal, um, that's gonna be different or set myself a little bit higher than what the competition is doing, and it's for free. It's because, you care about these people, and so you want them to remember that too, and so most of my business is repeat clients or, that client going and raving about you. That's the best referral you can have. That's the best business you can get is someone that came and said, "So and so said that you helped them install their washer and dryer," whatever it may be, um, and so I always try to at least one thing in every transaction, something like that. I got one closing in a few weeks, and we'll be moving all the stuff out of the garage. I have to move all the stuff in the garage, to make the house presentable for pictures, and we'll be moving all the stuff out of the garage. So, it's just always go above and beyond for your clients, man.
And I think the coolest thing as you're in this industry for the longer you are is when your clients trust you to start doing their kids deals. Like you're doing the kids of the parents,
Oh,
and I
yeah,
think
yeah, I've
that's a
had
fun
that. I've
story.
actually had that. It ages you a little bit. The whites in the
Yeah.
beard come out a little more,
Yeah.
but I have
Yeah.
had that. Yeah.
Yeah. I always think that's awesome that, they trusted you enough to know they refer their kids to come
I've
work
done the
with you.
opposite actually. Last year I had the kids relocated from Washington DC area. That was a couple years back now. And then the parents came. So the kids referred me to the parents.
That's
So
awesome,
we got to go both ways.
Yeah. So now I like to go into the segment that everyone seems to like is the fact or myth and kind of get your viewpoint on it.
Yeah,
Um, so open houses sell homes.
man, you're gonna get me in trouble here. It is a myth, man. Not a complete myth, and I'll tell you why. I've sold two houses in an open house in 13 years. I've done countless open houses, probably thousands. if not definitely in the high hundreds. And so I've had 2 times where I was sitting in the house that I actually sold that house. You know, a little secret in the industry, when a listing agent or somebody sitting in the home, they're looking for buyers. And so they're not
Mhm.
their main attention is not looking to sell that home. They might get some more exposure because the marketing you're doing as an open house and you get some traffic in there. A lot of time you just have nosy neighbors that want to see, you know, what did they do to this part of their house, or and so you get a lot of that. But it's an opportunity to meet people and potentially build clients out of the open house. So mostly myth, but twice I've sold
Yeah.
that house because
I
I
feel
will
like
say
it's
because of the marketing.
I feel like it's good on the buyer side because you get to see what you like in houses, maybe not that particular house, but, you gotta like, "Oh, I like the flow of that house, but I didn't like that room," or, "I didn't like the
100%, yeah.
backyard."
I feel like
Yeah.
buyers also like to go with their own too. So whether or not they have an agent, they might not even tell their agent that they're shopping that weekend for open house stuff. It's because they get to kind of see stuff and maybe be a little more vocal about it and talk about it and don't feel like someone's watching them. So I do feel like that does still happen. And maybe they do buy the house, but they'll use their agent. But that
Okay.
effort of that open house did get that home sold. So there are cases where they're helpful, but
Yeah.
mostly I say it's a myth.
Okay. The highest offer is always the best offer.
Myth.
Alright. I agree with that one.
Terms, man, terms. I mean, sometimes I've had sellers, take more desirable terms at lesser of a net. And so there's so many different moving parts to the contract.
Mhm.
It's not always going to be the highest offer. You might get a great offer that's just contingent on appraisal and it's such an unrealistically high offer where you just know it's not going to appraise, but
Or they're
the terms
contingent on the
aren't that
sale of
great.
another property. They can be the highest offer, but they're contingent on the sale of another property
Right, and
versus
not under
you have
contract, not even on the
yeah,
market yet, and so
yeah.
yeah, so it definitely is terms. Terms is most important.
You should always start with a lowball offer.
Nah, myth.
Okay, I agree too, because they might not come back.
Yeah,
If
man,
you
some of these sellers to get offended easily, man, you do that, they'll just say, "No, thank you," and that's the end
yeah.
of the conversation. If you really
Alright.
want the house, you really gotta do your research and put your best foot forward. I always do that. I do have some clients, and you gotta do what the client says, but you gotta at least educate them before that happens and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna do that, but this might happen," and so at least I could go back and be like, "Told you so."
Yeah.
I'll say
Now,
that bit.
what I'm looking off screen on is my list. So when people see me look off screen, people, I am paying attention to what's being said, but I'm prepping the next question. So this is a new section called Hot Take Agree or Disagree. You make your money when you buy, not when you sell.
Disagree.
All right.
I
The
feel like
cheap
selling the home is where the money comes from.
True. And
Yeah.
I think people can look at it both sides. Like let's say now, I would say most real estate agents, the go-to thing is, it's always a great time to buy. Or when someone says, when's the best time to buy? Yeah, 5 years ago, and then the second best time was yesterday.
Yeah.
I think in terms of when you buy, if you can get a good deal when you buy, and right now you can get a good deal when you buy, that you might not be there,
I
you're able to
got you.
sell at
Yeah.
that price because what you bought the house for. So
Because you
if you
made the
overpay
decision
for
to
a
purchase it.
house, yeah. So I think it depends on the property. So
Yeah, it's both. I mean,
yeah,
if you never bought it in the first place, you definitely got no money to make in
yeah,
it. So
exactly.
yeah,
And then you
they
have
both
to
make
sell it
sense.
to make your money. So
Mhm.
and then the cheapest house in the best neighborhood beats the nicest house in an average neighborhood.
Speaking to investors, I'm gonna say true. I mean,
Okay.
you want the cheapest home in the nicest neighborhood, man. The most potential for equity after you put your money into it and make it nice.
Yeah, because you can see where it's
That's
going.
almost rule of thumb for investors is that.
Yep. And then a great realtor will be willing to talk you out of buying a house.
I say true, and
I
I
agree.
sometimes I'm not gonna say over talk, but a lot of my clients really appreciate the fact that I talk them out of doing some things. I'm not the agent that, like I said before, I've got out of listing appointments where it just doesn't make sense for them to sell at that time for whatever reason. And I've had way more, homes that I've showed where they're maybe even fell in love with it, but I'm like, "Listen, I've been doing this for a long time, at least listen to what I got to say, do not do this, or do it at in, a smart avenue or route, extra due diligence, or negotiations, something." So I probably talk myself out of more deals if just how many deals you do is most important to you. I probably talk myself out of more deals than I do go into deals because I wanna make sure that that client doesn't hate me next year.
Exactly.
"You
I
told me to
feel
do this."
I feel like I would rather have someone being playing the other side to me deciding to buy or sell than just a yes person that's like, yeah, yeah, that really makes
100%.
you think about it.
They respect you more. They respect they start coming to you and I have one lady I'm working with now. I couldn't tell you how many homes we've looked at, and it's a very strange, unique scenario, and the budget's not the greatest, and it is what it is. And so we've been looking for a little while, but every house she's always like, "Man, you always catch, some of the craziest things." And it comes again aligning yourself with someone who has the numbers, who's been doing it for a long time. Not that I like to talk myself out of deals, but I want to
Yeah,
again make sure that I catch everything and
exactly.
going into the deal. So
Awesome. So as we get to the end here, a little bit on the personal side, what do you like to do when you're not doing real estate all the time? What's your what how does
is
Rick
that a thing?
relax?
Do we have
Yeah.
those little moments of time?
Yeah.
No, good question. So, right now, and most of the time, because we're in Charleston, we like to get out on the water, jet ski, do quite a bit of that. Um, Play pool. I play in a weekly pool league. That's always fun. Go to the beach. Anything outdoors when you can be outside. Man, it's hot right now. I think we have the heat index of like 120. I
I
just
know.
saw somewhere.
And it's
That's
not
just
going
nuts.
away. It's
Yeah.
not going away.
It's not, it's almost getting hotter,
Yeah.
and so but you gotta be near water because of that, you gotta get
Mhm.
out on the water, it makes it so much nicer.
And I know you used to be a big are you still a car guy?
Yeah, man, so it's super big in the car community, I love that, we actually have a car club here in the area. I think we're up to like 150 members. It's super fun time, something weekly. We always got something going on. It's just these temperatures right now kind of are awful to be hanging out in a parking lot
Yeah.
somewhere. But yeah, as fall gets in and spring is and winter is great. So yeah, I love cars for sure. All of them.
That's why I haven't been on my motorcycles. People don't realize how hot it is to sit in traffic in 98-degree weather with
At a stop
car
sign.
heat coming at you when you're sitting next to them and
Well, yeah,
everything
you're
like
just
that is
straddling a
terrible. And
motor.
you're in jeans and yeah,
No, thank
people
you.
they just don't realize it. Well,
But the winds, but when there's not
thank you for
winds.
your time today, everybody. If Yeah, exactly. You can reach out to Rick. His stuff will be in the captions on this post. If you're looking to buy, sell, Rick's your guy down in the Charleston and surrounding areas. He's here to give you the best service ever. So reach out to him. Thank you, Rick, for your time today.
Thank you,
And
brother.
everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Behind the Closing Table. Have a great day.
Appreciate you.